Oh my goodness. Hey everybody. Well, we'll wait a second to get started as everyone trickles in. And for those of you who are watching us in the future, hello. I'm excited. I am super excited. Where everyone in the chat, where are you all from? Everyone come say hello. Can you hear us? Can you see us? Can you see our beautiful screen that we're sharing? Yo, Ellie in the house. Okay. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Um, Welcome, everyone, to the AI Search to Sale, what the data reveals about AI search and e-commerce behavior. Have a lot of good information. We'll do some introductions, but we will include the replay, and I will email out the deck to everyone who's participated in this. Please don't hesitate to chat in the chats, get your questions in. We can go over a little after. If anyone's been to one of my webinars before, I always like to pack in way too much content. And then I end up talking really fast. And I am joined by, well, who are you, sir? Who are you joining
How's
us?
it going, everybody? I'm Josh. I head up AI strategy over at Profound. So excited to be here. We're the tool people. We make the tools and analytics for all this stuff. So it's always a pleasure.
So thank you for spending your Thursday with a couple of tools. So just a little bit about us. So iPullRank, we'll go into details, but we are a digital marketing agency doing SEO, content strategy, and everything AI in the past couple of years. What do you guys have? What is Profound?
I think we've got some prompts or something. I don't know. It could be something like that. No, we're an answer engine optimization software. So we do all of the analytics, taking action, monitoring, understanding how to actually improve your brand's visibility through data, through understanding all these answer engines. So that's Profound's name of the game.
There we go. And so today we're going to talk about like the state of e-commerce. We'll talk about AI search delivery, like how are we experiencing AI search. We'll go into a lot of the Black Friday data of what we saw last year, what we're seeing this year, and what you can actually do both right now and forward thinking. And I'm just going to throw a massive caveat out there. And Josh and I are always talking about this is like, we are such a weird space where anything that we say today could kind of go out the window tomorrow. It's really exciting. It's really fun. We don't take ourselves too seriously. And I realize there's a lot of businesses and revenue and everything at stake. So we're trying to provide the best information that we have at the time. Do you have any context or caveats that you want to add, Josh, before we like kind of dive in?
This is a volatile space. Everything is changing. I mean, Garrett, you said it the best way possible. This is the best information that exists right now. We all understand at the highest level that is possible. Given that the picture is always resolving, given that we're always getting more detail, it's always important to stay on with the context.
Exactly. And that is so tricky with both of our businesses, with us as an agency helping Fortune 500 clients, with you as a software service that's so dependent on ridiculous data and other people's kind of playgrounds.
Yeah.
It's tricky, but we're trying. So who am I? I'm a weird dude. I'm a dad. My name's Garrett Sussman, marketing director of iPullRank. My context, which I think is the biggest thing I'll talk about over and over with AI search, is I've got a beautiful wife and a little 3-year-old daughter. I've got a mini golden doodle named Lucy. I've lived in Virginia and California. I'm from Jersey. Lived in Louisiana. I'm in Virginia now. What day is it? I'm a big sports Eagles and Sixers fan, and I love reading ridiculous psychology books. As I guess you can't really see in this view, but I got a bunch of books in my background. My boss, my king, called me out. He's like, trying to look smart with all these books, which is accurate. I want you to think that I'm funny and smart. That's the biggest takeaway from this presentation. Central Jersey, Ryan. And who are you again?
I'm Josh Blyskal. I head up AI strategy over at Profound. I went with the flags. I'm a flag guy. I'm a history guy. So these are the places I've been from. This is the place I was born, Chicago. Went to University of Illinois, moved to Boston for a job over at HubSpot, went into the SEO world, and then AI search was calling. So I jumped over to Profound, moved to New York. Now I'm a New Yorker. Lots of fun. It's just been so exciting. I wish I had right now no special interest. My special interest is AEO. I live it. I breathe it. It is literally my 24/7 deal. Maybe next year I'll think about some sports. I'll do an activity. I don't know, but that's what I'm doing right now.
Dude, we are such dorks. Okay, since you went with the flag thing, I'll put you on the spot. What is your number one red flag right now?
Number one red flag for what? Oh,
Should we be
my
more?
favorite. Yeah, for what? My number one red flag. I mean, I was gonna say Canada. Canada has a great red flag. I took it so literally. I'll interpret it that way.
What's your food red flag? What's your food red flag?
Oh my gosh. Anything poached. I'm not a big fan of poached stuff. So I was actually out. Oh, this is gonna go back. I was in Montreal and they were like, "You want some poached halibut?" And I was like, "That sounds amazing." It turns out I don't really like poached halibut. I don't know, not really my deal. So that's my food red flag.
There you go. I respect it. Okay, so let's dive in. We got a lot of data to dive into. So the state of e-commerce. So we are like 3 weeks out from Black Friday, almost literally 3 weeks out from Black Friday and Cyber Monday. One interesting thing I'll say too is last year, Josh and I were already talking about this stuff when Profound was really like kind of just getting all over the map. You guys are probably sick of hearing them if you're paying attention to AI search, but like we actually did a little experiment about what was showing up for Black Friday. The question is, are people actually using AI search for shopping this year? And so the one thing I want to call out with AI search and the value there is like historically with Google search, with Amazon, we are Amazon less so. With Google search, we're used to getting our 10 blue links, going to do our research, jumping back, doing research, jumping back. And it's led to this entire like search journey that's very messy. As marketers, we've always wanted this, very clean top of the funnel all the way down. But that's just not how people search anymore. It's this constant like infinite loop of triggers that lead you to exploration, evaluation, back and forth, and then you purchase something, or maybe you don't purchase something at all. And AI search makes it even more complicated. Attribution is even more difficult. It supports all these other channels, all these other entry points, and you don't have to use that kind of cognitive lift of going back and forth, but people are using it.
Yeah,
Josh?
yeah. We did a survey. We're like, okay, the attribution's completely shot. It's really hard to understand what percentage of people are actually using these tools. So we surveyed 2,300 American shoppers, and 58% of them reported to us that they do use AI tools at least once a week to either look at products or directly shop. And we actually sat on that insight. The cool thing about that insight is like, we were like, well, that's unbelievable. We'll have to do a follow-up study. Gemini released a study. They had 58%. Then we were kicking ourselves. We're like, damn, all right. So it is 58%. And then I think Forrester released another study and now it's 60%. SEMrush released a study, 60%. So we know the users are behind these tools. They are using it in these ways. It's a huge confirmation for us, a pretty big moment.
It feels inevitable. I mean, just in the fact of like, I remember I'm an old fogey, but like, growing up in the 90s when people like felt uncomfortable using and putting their credit cards just to buy stuff on the internet, like this is the next version of that. So what do we got
Yes.
here?
Oh my gosh, this is still from the survey data. So 1,600 of the respondents basically said, yes, I do use AI search. When we followed up, and we're like, all right, what are you using? This is the market share for all the different tools. You got ChatGPT over there, 65% market share for like shopping related questions. Gemini's in there, Claude's in there, Copilot, Perplexity. So really interesting group of tools. I just think it's really cool. I just wanted to include it. Yeah, this one's also pretty sick. This is the route afterwards because the attribution's broken. So everybody is left wondering, okay, you go, you find the thing. What we found out is like 80% plus of people, the way they're using AI search for shopping, they find the product they like, they highlight that product with their cursor, then they do, Command Shift N, new tab, and then they're jumping into Google, they're zooming through. 24% go directly to Google. 54% go to commerce channels, 20% to Amazon, 19% to brand websites, and 15% to physical stores. These are where consumers are actually moving once they find the product they want on ChatGPT. I think this is cool. Extremely, extremely interesting data. Again, it's from a survey sample size, 1,600 people. We wanted to spend a lot of money on the survey. That's to the level of like when people are doing presidential polls, Pew does like 1,000 people. We did 1,600. We were like, this has to be quality. So we're within a percentage of two on the error side. It's not going to be very different than this.
And just to call out in general is like it's so easy for all of us who are marketers or in AI search to like be in a bubble and to make assumptions. Like everyone's search behavior has never been more complex. I'll talk about our UX
Yeah.
survey that we did, not the 1,600 sample size, but just it highlights like people shop on TikTok. People shop on Reddit. It is wild when you actually have these conversations. That's anecdotal, but we'll get into some more of this data that like you guys are seeing.
We did some great math here on the commerce side. $33,000 of commerce every 10 seconds. Basically, $3,300 of AI influenced commerce happens in the US every 3 seconds. That basically equates to 8% of the entire commerce world now passes through an AI engine in some form, in some way. And that's even before instant checkout. That was even before ACP started. So these numbers are actually old. And when I showed you the 58%, the cooler part about that was that we did that survey again before shopping was released. This is just people going through. So I think like the important part is that the definition of shopping, like definitionally, is broadened. Like you're talking about, okay, people shop through TikTok, people shop through Reddit. I think people would hardly identify that with shopping, which is what makes getting this data so hard because you have to widen it to be like, have you looked about products? Do you think about products on these channels and on these platforms? Because now that shopping journey really starts even at the problem level, even at the information level. So to me, this is crazy stuff. So 8% of commerce, $3,300 a second in
Yeah.
commerce is moving.
And I mean that's the whole thing. To that point, like traditional search is melting down. I mean, we're so in a performance metric sort of mindset, and when we're thinking about how we're trying to strategize and the tactics and what we're trying to actually achieve, so many people's KPIs are still tied to traffic and rankings and all this stuff. Where like rankings don't necessarily equal revenue anymore. It doesn't guarantee traffic. Content doesn't equal like quantity and keywords. More pages don't equal more traffic. And so we really need to reframe, which is really hard when you are reporting to a C-suite that's based on revenue. And a lot of this is looking at like leading metrics and trying to predict and make messy kind of prognostications of what your activities are achieving. But we need, like, if you're saying anything else, you're kind of full of crap, right? Like you are kind of full of it. And so we need to accept how like tricky it is. And we're seeing, to your point, like e-commerce is still growing. Like we hear these conversations about like whether we're in a recession and a lot of complicated, macroeconomics and political conversations. But like worldwide, we're still seeing 6.8, trillion, 7.3 billion, 7.8 billion going up. The total retail sales are going up. The retail e-commerce sales, it's going up and up and up. And so Adobe, same sort of thing, like their forecast for Cyber Monday, you can see where these jumps are. In 2025, they're expecting to hit 253 billion this holiday season, which would still be a 5% year over year growth. So there's no like holding back and pulling in. And then specifically, like looking at it, in terms of the Adobe expects AI traffic to rise by 500% year over year. So peaking in the 10 days leading up to it, which I'll show you with ChatGPT, what we were actually seeing via some of the Profound's data. And so, to Josh's point, people are like enjoying that mix of the in-store and the online shopping, and they're also not mutually exclusive. I'm sure everyone here at some point has been in a store, seen a product that they didn't anticipate seeing, break out your phone and look at the reviews on the spy. Have you done that, Josh? I firsthand
Of
like
course,
looked.
100%. I'm the guy in the grocery store, to my wife's chagrin, who's looking at best pie crust on ChatGPT. When we're like, I'm that guy. I'm like, she's like, at least stand over to the side of the aisle because I'm that guy, completely.
So we can't even think about it as like differentiate channels, which makes everything that much more messy. Is like there are literally people who are kind of blending the digital, and we'll talk about that some with the multimodal stuff as well. But like with our study, we said we asked someone, and everything is so task and prompt specific. Like in our UX AI mode study, when someone's like looking for indoor shoes under $75, where we're having people actually using AI mode, which is still a garbage product if we're being honest. Google's making it as hard as possible. It's improving, which I'll show as well. But like when it comes to this guy, guy from Long Island, 35-year-old dude, when it comes to research, it can really help me kind of dial in on certain things. It's just browsing every product out there. I might have an easier time using Walmart or Amazon or a specific retailer. So you have have people who will do their research using ChatGPT and then go buying the product. You still have people, and we heard this in our study over and over, that go direct to the brand. So, you can't assume that everyone's following this specific narrative, this specific journey.
Yeah.
Josh?
And we can talk about the breakdown there, but even in the last month, 12.5% of all ChatGPT responses populate a shopping modal, which is pretty cool. I mean, the shopping database, by the way, is totally different than the RAG database. So that basically means that if you're using RAG, you're not using shopping. And if you're using shopping, you're not using RAG. So you have to think about your visibility in both of those experiences. So even if, to me, I think ChatGPT is probably more interesting, at least right now, for shopping than Google AI mode. But there are some cool frameworks we'll talk about a little bit later, a little more into the technicals there. But at the same time, the retrieval rate for ChatGPT's the RAG model is 95. Yeah, and this is the population rate. Like, I want to give you a sense that no, this is not something that's subject to a ton of volatility. It's starting to really normalize at around 9%. So we're really seeing kind of this larger scale difference. And again, this is all time. So this is looking through ever since it was really launched to now. Oh, the light went out. We're back. But yeah, it's interesting. Still consistent. Don't get a sense that it's volatile yet.
E-commerce after dark, and I want to kind of preempt any arguments about like, oh, it's just like 1% of search in the grand scheme of things. And you are absolutely right, right? Like, Google still has 90% of the market when it comes to search. It is really all about Google right now. But that doesn't mean that anything you're doing for marketing your company shouldn't take into consideration exponential growth that's going to happen, year over year, like what we're seeing this year compared to last year. So don't get blinded by it doesn't move the needle this year. I mean, people are shopping, and in the grand scheme of things, you can see, we're seeing steady growth in searches. And as Rand Fishkin has kind of been beating the drum with Datos, is AI search isn't necessarily stealing market from Google. It's additive. We're seeing people do more types of searches. Another thing in our UX study is people are talking to their phones, and it's a completely different type of search. And I know, like, so many of us get so frustrated with what Sundar Pichai says and whether we can trust whether Google is actually giving us accurate data, but like, people are doing more searches. They are doing different types of searches, whether that's being satisfied from AI overviews, AI mode, ChatGPT, Perplexity. It's just growth. And the other, and I'm gonna kind of get into this. So Adobe, in terms of the conversion rates, because there's a lot of people who want to argue that AI search doesn't convert. So we have seen growth from Adobe Analytics did this study from, last year through last year's Black Friday, that it was a jump from 43% difference between traditional search and AI search to 9%. So we're seeing that kind of blend. But there was this study that came out from Germany this is a few weeks ago, and people were saying, oh, this proves that organic large language model traffic doesn't convert as well as any other channels. And it kind of served this agenda saying, like, oh, you don't have to worry about it. This isn't a channel you should optimize for. And I call BS on that, because to what we were saying earlier, even if people aren't directly converting through AI search, that doesn't mean they're not doing their research there. And one of the graphs I actually pulled from that study shows, you can see through this red line, the conversion rate is growing. It's not stagnant like everyone else is. Like, we are just at the beginning of the way that user behavior is changing. Do you want to speak to that, Josh? Like, what do you think we're looking at going forward?
The clicks and the referrals are the worst thing to look for. I mean, it is like that's the bottom of the barrel metric. What you really have to be watching for is the influence and the citations and the visibility, because those things dictate, as we know, all of the users, again, they're injecting the chaos into this. They are not doing things in a way that's healthy for attribution and easy for attribution, but that's where the value is. It's in a system that is inherently kind of chaotic. And yeah, I love this study too, for the same reason that, like, okay, you can take one thing away from it, which is that AI search is not the highest converting by traffic. Fine. That's still kind of a metric that I wouldn't use. Fine. But you could also take away, again, that growth puts it within the next year, it's going to be. And that's even through a metric I wouldn't even buy into as the main metric to even track in this case. We're moving into zero click. it's
Yeah.
crazy to me that like simultaneously, and I totally, it's not crazy. I get it. But I also think that it demands a little bit of modernization in our approach that like I work with these brands where like we are ready to embrace zero click search and we are going to goal our success based on the number of clicks we get from zero click search. And it's like, oh gosh, all right. So we have tension. Where do we start to think about what system here is going to give in for the other? And I think the user behavior is going to dictate the way that this thing is going to go. And the user behavior is very clear.
Yeah, and there's a lot of discomfort for marketers,
Yes.
for any finance folks who want answers, who want to like, the whole concept of ROI. If I'm going to invest in content marketing, and yeah, the strategy is changing. That's where we get into this whole like, this isn't a conversation about GEO versus SEO because, in my opinion, a lot of it is semantics when it comes to like strategies and tactics, and we'll talk
Yes.
about like probabilities in terms of different outputs, but like ultimately it's an uncomfortable conversation, but that shouldn't stop you from monitoring and reporting and trying to move the needle on any of these metrics.
Yes.
So in terms of like today, where we are and what AI search looks like when we're starting to think about like specifically like Black Friday types of searches, traditional search, and like for anyone who's comparing AI search to Google, Google is still very frustrating because everyone's obsessed with this idea of freshness. I know you have some bigger data, but like what I've been seeing is like a lot of times Google and AI search still don't get it right. ChatGPT doesn't get it right. Despite all this talk about freshness, they're still pulling from 2024
Yeah.
like links and citation. And this is taken from last week. This is like, so we are, a month out from Black Friday. This is a best Black Friday gifts. And I'm seeing September 24th and October 21st, 2024 being pulled into AI overviews. And this is Google.
Yeah.
Um, we're seeing it for shopping. We're seeing it. So here's a GIF I wanted to show, which is to your point about this is AI mode and all of the different data that's being pulled in. Now, what's interesting, and you were saying, and we'll talk about like how ChatGPT is slightly different. I tried to do ChatGPT today just to check. And a lot of this data, which was normally on ChatGPT, I couldn't replicate. Like it was just giving me stores to buy on. I feel
Interesting.
like that's a bug and that's not like a long-term thing because we've seen sentiment and yeah.
Yeah, it seems that I mean, typically they would include some extra stuff there. That is interesting on its own. But anyway, yeah, this is
Okay. And
cool.
then we're just seeing more features being added daily. Hello, Mark. We've seen more features being added daily. This came up in September, which is just one way that AI mode is making things easier to compare, where you can literally, it's because there's so much friction in the way that we want to get to the information that we want. So it's like, maybe I want to take these three products and I want to click on them and I want to compare them. And then I want to have an AI, comparison table. And so like we're going to see more of these features pop in and out of AI mode and ChatGPT constantly. Do you anticipate
Yeah.
that, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the product feed for OpenAI, even OpenAI is kind of like, I think they're the canary in the coal mine for this specifically. I mean, the whole thing is based on, feature completeness. If someone says, I want shoes with, red shoes made out of leather with suede that are not super heavy and clunky, there are fields in that entire product feed that are going to dictate whether or not your product passes those filters or doesn't. That field completeness is such an important part, and a lot of people don't have that kind of structured information, at least in the products, or aren't thinking about how to populate that. No, I mean, like for Google specifically, have you seen the A2A protocol? Have you seen that?
Yes.
I mean, it's nuts. The agentic negotiations, the way that it's going to start creating bundle offers and things like that. The amount of information that you can get into that model via, you know, I think they're going to do a product feed style solution. I don't think it's going to be quite as direct as what OpenAI is doing, but via that specific solution is going to dictate whether or not you win the long tail. It's for sure.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. I mean, this is one of my hot takes that I promise, but there's a lot of people who are very anti AI generated content. And I get that. Generative like AI content. I think that there's not enough good content out there for the long tail. And I don't think, humans are able to produce that. And, we'll talk a little bit more about the feed, but to the product feeds and the full complete, information that can be provided, it's the SEO and the marketer's responsibility to
Yeah.
produce that content. That is our responsibility. And so we need to think about everything that's in there, and opportunities that we can use to address the long tail as well. One thing I'll call out as well. So, Google's been working on this project Astra, this AI interface with video in real time. That really hasn't been kind of rolled out in a public capacity, or at least in a way that it's like mainstream consumer. Google Lens has, and that is very much from the conceptual aspect of multimodal, that it's not just about text, it's not just about the images you provide, it's what people are doing with their phones in real time in those stores, as we're mentioning, to get information as marketers. That's a consideration. I think that's critical.
Yeah.
So real quick, Google Shopping Graph in terms of where Google gets a lot of its information compared to ChatGPT. There's so many different sources to this, whether it's like the retailer and manufacturer's websites, the product detail pages, YouTube videos, product reviews with Google Merchant Center, forums, online shops, the Knowledge Graph, all of it. The Google Merchant Center being, in my opinion, the main one when it comes to providing product information, but it's also such a tricky thing to navigate when you, like, depending who you are, whether you're the actual brand or the manufacturer, the retailer, um, working together with competing feeds. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Josh, about like who you are and who you have to kind of navigate with.
Oh my gosh. I haven't even really thought about it. I haven't thought about it yet. I think it's such a big consideration because of how there's both this kind of standardization, but there isn't standardization across any of it. And so
Right.
there's going to be this, I mean, it's just kind of like a knife fight at the moment, at least in my perspective.
Right. And so many, like, at the enterprise level, there are so many strict guidelines and rules between, like, if you are an Apple retailer, you have to play with all of their within,
Yes.
all their marketing materials and limitations and specifications, and that goes across all different types of industries. And it's just, I think AI search makes it even more complex in terms of what you can and can't do, because there's opportunity there. And so it's like, if you are the brand distributing to retailers, I feel like you need to open up the floodgates in terms of what type of information is allowed to be included, because if you don't, you're limiting. But at the same time, everyone's business model is different, and like where your true revenue comes from, whether it's like your own direct to consumer selling, which is more and more of an option, versus the retailers, it's a really complex conversation.
Yeah.
Differentiator too, in terms of like, and we'll speak to ChatGPT's like unified feed versus the fragmented feeds of Google. So with ChatGPT's kind of recent merchant opportunities and agent protocol and the ability to sell within ChatGPT, it's a little confusing right now. There's actually, I'm going to go right here quick. There's a merchant application form which they are approving on a rolling basis. And I know you've done a lot of work on this, Josh, so I'll let you speak to it. But just right now, in theory, if you want to get access to all these developer docs, with all these different opportunities that what do you call it, that Chat OpenAI is providing
Yeah.
to augment the searches, you have to fill out this form. Can you
Yeah.
speak to what you know?
Well, I mean, the first thing I know, and I think this is crazy, is one of the checkboxes on the form is my product feed is ready to go and is ready to basically be ingested into OpenAI's system. That's the first checkbox, beyond like we're interested in being a result. I think it's the first criteria you have to pass. And so for OpenAI, they're literally going to basically show the brand, here's an endpoint. Now send us your CSV file, your TSX file, whatever. Send us your HTML, your JSON, whatever format it's in. And I think there is actually a pretty wide gamut of formats they take, which is quite nice, nice on them. But you have to send it on a 15-minute cadence. I think it's up to a 15-minute cadence of recency, uh,
Mhm.
with all those fields as filled out as you possibly can, with up to a 5,000 word description, yada yada. There's so many different opportunities. I mean, you can even do things like, and people were memeing on this. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a field called product popularity. And people were memeing on it. They were like, oh, why don't I just set all my products to 100? And this is obviously not SEOs, because if you know how a sitemap works, it's not about the product popularity relative to others' products. It is your product popularity in your own catalog. But there is this opportunity for kind of, I think, either canonicalization or decanonicalization of those products in the feed. Like, there is this world where OpenAI is going to have to be very, I think, vigilant against people who, because I can just submit a CSV, why not submit variants of my product on each row? AirPods for teachers, AirPods for tech professionals, AirPods for this, AirPods for that. Because at the end of the day, theoretically, you could do one thing or another. And right now, OpenAI doesn't really have a good solution for that, I don't think. That's why they're doing this manual approval process, zooming through these things, because it is just one CSV file. It is just one kind of product element. The cool thing they do have, and I'll turn it over to you in a sec, Garrett,
No.
is that the partnerships that they have are incredibly interesting and very compelling. That enables you, unlike Etsy on Shopify, to basically just sync with either of those companies' CMSs or CDNs and just basically benefit from the same kind of scoping, the same spam reduction that they're using. Very similar to how OpenAI published or partnered with Bing to do the RAG in the early days, because why would OpenAI want to deal with search engine spam? There's just rely on someone else who's doing it quite well. So those partnerships are going to do a ton of the heavy lifting, I think, beyond this product feed. I think we're going to see the rollout of a lot of different merchant partners.
Dude, so many thoughts. Like first off, I to your point, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. But Mike King wrote a post kind of comparing Google's feeds versus ChatGPT's developer docs in terms of what's the same, what's like has nuanced differences, and what's like net new. There is so much room for interpretation with some of
Yes.
these. I mean, like OpenAI is not playing by Google's rules of building a search engine. Like there, to your point, there is so much that will need to be kind of navigated and mitigated. And as a business, it's very tricky because you don't know what's going to benefit you short term, but necessarily have a negative impact long term. I also think, to your point about they just there was a share this week about how they've partnered with a million different businesses in different capacities through various types of partnerships. And there is a question about the biases that would be implicit in the output. LLMs are still a black box, let alone what OpenAI's parameters are. We don't know to what extent they're putting their thumb on the scale of how they'll kind of bias towards. Is it just a matter of big brands because of real world bias, or will these partnerships have an influence?
That's another good
Um,
point. I mean,
yeah.
if you want to zoom through, if you go to the next one, this is the cool part, because what we're seeing right now, and I wish I could show you, there is this world where it's two short tails on the end of the spectrum in terms of big brand, small brand, and this is how it works. So only 36% of products shown in the shopping modal originate from the brand's own website, because of the partnerships with Etsy, because of the partnerships with Walmart, because of all these really interesting partnerships that basically mean that, the big box retailers, because their CMSs are so consistent, because their product feeds are so consistent, work very well. But then the middle of the curve, I wish I had the slide here. It's not in here. The middle of the curve breaks down because on the other side, it's all these Etsy sellers who are like little tiny, I mean, like Susan's Beads is winning out against like I don't know, like a major like children's toy company, right? Because it's in the Etsy CMS, they're selling on Etsy and they get the direct to sale for that Etsy store in a way that a lot of these middle of the road kind of brands just aren't getting. Like Lego's not going to get visibility in it. Lego's not, their product feed isn't in there. So what's going to happen? How do we actually make that relationship work? So right now there's this huge opportunity for, I think, the big boxes, and then these rando Shopify sellers who are getting great. I mean, they're doing excellently in ChatGPT shopping, at least in my experience.
And not to derail this at all, but one book like I read that I highly recommend for everyone is like The Alignment Problem by Brian Christian. It was written in 2020, so 5 years of things have happened. But when you think about all these different platforms, whether it's um, you know OpenAI or Google or Anthropic, they all have different value systems. So when we're talking as SEOs, we've been complaining for a while of like what deserves to rank number one is a very complex discussion that's editorial in nature. Like we
Yes.
always argue of like, what are these different ranking factors that are going to get you to rank at number one? Google played with this idea of like perspectives, like what opinions deserve to be number one. People are so anti-listicles. Like listicles are all biased based on different agendas. So we need to accept the fact that with the volatility of all of this, that we don't know what biases are in place. There are definitely biases. I mean, just the fact that, this is a westernized
Yeah.
AI that's trained on, like English for the most part, with some like a smaller corpus of other languages. The biases are inherent, and that goes for everything from high level all the way to granular. My other big thing is in terms of user behavior. I'm just going to throw this in here, is that I don't think consumer behavior is going to change in a significant capacity until AI mode becomes the default version of search. I think ChatGPT is not going to make the market share impact that Google
No.
will. But I do think when this happens, which I think will happen in the next 6 to 12 months, whether it's AI mode or web search guide, that's when I think everything changes and all of us are just kind of like in a completely different ecosystem.
I think Atlas is going to accelerate that potentially. I think regardless of Atlas's own user base or user group, like Atlas could completely fall on its face, in my opinion. What it's taught us is what the agentic browsing modality will look like in the future, a world where that is the preview into the world where AI mode is actually first, right? Like that's the world where you have to click into the SERP to see the SERP, where the standard is the chat response, right? I mean, do you feel the same way, Garrett?
Only it well, so in the context of Atlas, only if it becomes the default. Like
Yes.
as long as Chrome or Safari with like Google being the default search engine is the default, that is what's interesting is seeing conversations around like Apple originally like going with OpenAI as their default for Siri, or starting to integrate with that because Siri is obviously crap. And now we're hearing that they're leveraging. There was just a major deal with Gemini, and we know with the AI bubble that everything is um nepotistic's not the right word, but everything is they're all using the same products, and yeah, it's a vicious
It's a
like
loop.
Ouroboros, yeah, of
Yeah.
things. Um, I think that until we are forced where there's no friction, where we have to choose an AI search, like AI overviews, the reason AI overviews is so impactful is because it's on Google search and you can't turn it off.
Exactly. Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah.
So let's
I
go
mean,
to
the
Black Friday.
tricky
'Cause there's-
yeah,
Yeah.
let's do that. I
Okay.
was gonna say
So,
that
yeah, go.
yeah.
You need to
I
get
was
out.
gonna say that the tricky part in it is basically that, like, if Chrome does change, and if AI mode does change to become that experience, then the unit of the URL and the page have to change their meaning. Like, the importance of a click and the importance of what a page is no longer basically the URL is no longer the measure of the magnitude of the pages, or the click is no longer the measure of the page's actual success. That's
Right.
insane to me, right? Because if I go to AI mode and I ask what the best hotel is, now the important part, because that answer is just generative, is that I
Mhm.
inform that answer. I get into that space. I play aggressively, and I can be in that top list, or I can make my hotel appear. Or if I'm a hotel aggregator, I can be the trusted source. But then measuring that becomes the huge challenge. It's such a challenge to do this work if that change does take place, which I want to prepare marketers for is like we saw Atlas. If Google says, wow, we really quite like that product, we think that product has some legs, we'd like to make AI mode as a product more like what Atlas is doing, then really we're faced with a really difficult measurement problem.
Yeah, and I will also argue that none of this, in my opinion, means that you shouldn't have a website or you shouldn't
No,
invest in your
exactly.
content. Like you still need to build a brand. A brand is basically all of this will be supported by your brand and be impacted by your brand, even if the way we're thinking about us showing up in AI search isn't as dependent on your specific website. That's why we're so omni-channel.
True.
And to your point, Ellie, you're right. You can turn off AI overviews, but it's not the default. The default is AI overviews are on, which is my point. It's like, yeah, people, if you have enough, like, yeah, I can go and, put on Microsoft Edge as my default browser, but like, I'm not going to do that for obviously different reasons. But Anyway, okay, so Black Friday, just looking at prompt volume, and this speaks to the idea of 10 million prompts, and this is based on Profound's data, which is extrapolated, clickstream data from a bunch of different sources, like the best of what you're going to find right now, but it's accurate, not precise. My big thing with this is even if the volume isn't big, it's clear the direction that we're going in. And so I want to say that I would not be surprised if this is 10x next year. I'm pretty sure it's 10x from last year. But what's really interesting, and this is one of the cool features that you guys have, is the and I apologize if this is a profound commercial. I just think the product has really cool features on. But looking at the intents of these searches, like even if I'm seeing Black Friday, that 70% is generative, which says to me that it's a lot of marketers and SEOs using it to create content around Black Friday, which is less as the commercial intent of or informational intent being 23%. So it's not like a mover and shaker there. But as we break down, you can see the vast majority of these e-commerce searches for Black Friday are coming from ChatGPT. And this is a reflection of the kind of daily usage of these accounts. I think that they are proportionate in terms of how big they currently are.
Yeah.
And then looking, because it's clickstream data, we have the information of like, who is it? You can start to see, and this is what I think marketers should start to think about when they're looking at this data, is getting into the persona aspect. And now you can make the argument, this is clickstream data. So this isn't synthetic outputs of saying, which I know Mark Williams Cook is in here. I'm still of the argument that if you are creating a prompt and you're appending it with a significant amount of persona data, yes, it's not going to be the exact ecosystem that an individual is going to have the same generative output, because none of it is the same. It's going to be different every time. But I do think it can point you in the right direction. It's accuracy, not precision, to give you a sense of if you're creating content in the right direction. So we can see on Black Friday by age, we can see Black Friday by income, and clearly, like, people who are make 100 to 200K are buying a lot of stuff right now. That is the biggest point. Did you find anything interesting from this data, Josh, that kind of speaks to you?
Oh my gosh. I think the coolest thing is just the age. It leans younger. I think that's the wild part of it. I mean, it's like we know that, but also getting confirmation that folks, I mean, the second largest group beyond 18 through 25 is 41 through 60. Like, that's, to me, I would have bet it was the other way around. I would have thought it was going to decay. It was going to be leaning super young, Gen Z, college students, getting those first kind of Black Friday deals, getting used to this kind of thing. I mean, they are far and away the most prolific users of the tool, and the most volume, the most raw occurrences comes from people who are just a bit older. On the income side, that one also just surprises me. I mean, but I think if you looked at the average user of ChatGPT, it is kind of a white collar professional. I think it does skew that way a little bit as well. Yeah, not super surprising there. Yeah,
But also
really
younger.
interesting.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah,
younger, if you have a lower salary, it makes sense that you're
it's
searching
true.
for Black Friday. You might be using to, either, I'm almost surprised that under is not higher, like for maybe people who don't have an income, where they're
Yeah,
asking for like gifts for their parents. Like, I could imagine that would grow. So I'm a little surprised there, but but maybe they're not actually searching Black Friday anyway. Mostly US based, but it is, across a lot of the EU and some South America and obviously Australia. What's interesting here too, and I like how you guys, this is obviously cleaned for privacy's sake, but looking at some of the specific prompts, it really highlights our whole concept of keywords in AI search is kind of garbage going forward. Like, we can't look at any sort of exact match. We have to think of like phrases and topicality,
yeah.
because everything's so individualistic, not only the individual ecosystem, but the individual prompts. Is that how you're thinking about it?
I think fan out's going to save us though too from this whole prompt war. Like, everyone's talking about like personas and how different all the personalized searches are. I think to a certain extent the fan outs are going to start helping us kind of collapse the difference between what's the best Black Friday deal question mark and what's the best Black Friday deal no question mark. That those things, even if I said, I'm 26. I live in New York. What's the best Black Friday deal versus what's the best Black Friday deal? Looking at the fan out from that and determining, all right, actually the fan out's the same. Actually, the search results being routed the same way is going to help us understand the difference between helpful signal and
Yep.
unhelpful signal, things that are generalized, things that are kept separate. And I think a lot of marketers right now are like, they're kind of fearful of the variation. And
Yeah.
I think the thing that will eventually help is the ability to really monitor and track the fan outs, which is something we're working on. I wish I could give a demo here, but we've got a really cool fan out product in the works, which is really cool because it helps basically consolidate and say, hey, don't worry about that signal from that persona because we let you put personas together now, but everyone's now wondering, all right, what's the impact of those personas? And the fan out ends up kind of solving a lot of those questions. There's a really cool research piece we'll be releasing about it too.
I can't wait. And you could see here too. The other thing kind of speaks to like whether you're using like Mark's like also ask tool that looks at Google's like people also ask types
Yes,
of things. Looking at these,
awesome.
it highlights how important it is to talk to your customers. And it's hard. I think it's hard for marketers because you see a question like, are PC part sales better on Black Friday or Christmas? Like they're basically asking you like, should I wait and see through your marketing BS, for this sale or that sale? And like they want those answers. So if you have the ball, if you have like the guts, the courage as a brand to answer those very real questions, I think that's an
Yes,
opportunity.
you'll win the
So
citation.
yeah.
Yeah, you'll win the citation, and if that real estate matters, there's a lot of brands out there that I work with. They don't care about the like they're never going to get mentioned in like Converse is never going to get mentioned in how to tie your shoes. But maybe that real estate, that little chiclet is so valuable. It is like a billboard on the answer. The opportunity to click may be enough to justify working to answer those crazy questions.
I mean, it really impacts all the strategy. So I'm so bad with like mitigating time. I don't know if we'll go over if we're going to take Q&A at the end, but let's run through some of the like, what do you do? So Cyber Monday is a lot of the same. And like I said, I'll send out the deck after this. It's just significantly lower traffic than or prompt volumes compared to Black Fridays across the board, but everything else kind of lines up. Um, what I did find is interesting. So going back to, looking at the year over year Black Friday data, you can kind of see how the citations have fluctuated, both from like brands to media publications to social, like Reddit, to retailers. Like there's nothing stable about this. It's all volatile. And this is going from last Black Friday to this Black Friday for Black Friday related prompts, over 500K citations tracked. And so I looked at, specifically what the citations were, and there's a lot of fluctuation there as well. You see, last year it was more, it was like, I mean, you saw a little more media publications. What's interesting, and you can kind of speak to the entity update here, Josh. Which is a typical like SEO and OpenAI catching up, but like we're seeing a lot more retailers and brands and less media in the top results, which makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the do you want me to talk about the entity update?
Yeah, real
Yeah,
quick.
the entity update's crazy right now. I'll do it super quickly. I'm looking at my watch, 30 seconds or less. Basically, the rollout of these new entity tags basically means that OpenAI is starting to standardize how they talk about brands and starting to get much more opinionated. So now we've seen on average, before the update, 6 brands were mentioned per response. OpenAI is now drilling down to around 3 brands per response. And as a result, it is now a knife fight for first place in a way that it's never been before. Everybody's visibility. It's not like I would say that everyone's visibility is decreasing, but the gap has now really shrunk. Someone who was in 7th place before was like, oh man, I've got a long way to climb before I get to first. Now everyone's just fighting over like 10 to 20% visibility rather than 40 to 50%. So everybody who's been tracking this or hasn't been tracking this, they both have huge opportunities now to start closing that gap in a way that they just didn't have before. Every brand that's not in first place has never been closer to first place in AI visibility in their lives than they are right now, just because of that gap closing in.
That's why, and something to think about when we're talking about rankings here too, and just this paradigm shift is like we're not talking always like literally being the first. It's like how like are you the most recommended for all the different types of prompts across all the different types of topics? Like you need to think about this when you're talking to your C-suite that it's
Yes.
not about ranking number one for the one keyword Black Friday shoe sales, right? It's like,
Yes.
are you being recommended for 70 to 90% of them compared to your competitors that might be, 50 to 40, 40 to 50%. It's just like we need to reframe how we're talking about rankings and visibility if we're looking at performance and the value of showing up in AI. So what do you do? I mean, iPullRank, we talk about relevance engineering. We think the paradigm shift is focusing. There's a lot of holistic SEO, but it's all around like AI information retrieval. And a lot of this stuff continues to be the same thing. We're just thinking about it like you can't just only focus on your website anymore as SEOs. Content strategy, digital PR, user experience. The way, as Josh was mentioning with fan out queries, the way that, you start to see all these variations pulled into a single query. We're not trying to rank or show up for a specific query. Like that doesn't matter anymore, especially at the top of the funnel. And so where it's pulling from is all these different sources. Mike built Q4ia, which leverages Gemini. There are a bunch of different free tools out there. This is one free one, but the idea here is like, okay, if I put in Black Friday electronics, before you even get the output, what are the 20 to 30, and there's less on ChatGPT, but I anticipate they'll expand. But on Google, you'll see 20 to 30 related searches, which could be all over the place. And this is probabilistic. So it's not like you're getting this and you're like, this is the definitive related 30 searches. This just starts to give you a sense of what you're looking at. And he added on here based on Gemini's kind of perspective. I'm sorry for anthropomorphizing LLMs. Apologies. But thinking about like, what is the routing format? What is the specific type of content that is most likely to be pulled in to satisfy the search intent, whether it's a table, a buyer's guide, a comparison guide, an article, a video content, a review roundup, because, so often we want to show up because it generates the most revenue. And a lot of times you'll have an AI search being like, yeah, that's not the type of content I'm looking for. Like, sorry, I don't want your detail page. So, optimizing your passages on the content to make sure that it's broken up. I know people hate when we say chunks, but making sure that you're addressing all these query fanouts. It's not one on each individual page. You can still have these skyscraper pages, but, there is something to be said for the economic nature of resource allocation of like, if you have a long page, it's going to take longer for the bot to get through. And it might just, I mean, you've seen a lot of this, Josh, in terms of
A ton. Yeah.
a lot of SEO is the same, just clear semantic content that's properly, hierarchical, that it's clear in the writing, using semantic triples, making it as clear as possible. I know there's a lot of trickiness when it comes to wanting to maintain your brand and have your brand voice and tone, but your brand voice and tone can't interfere with the clarity of your content. So, if you're creating content that you want to be pulled into AI search results, just understand that the more fluffy and, slang, or I guess if people search for slang, that's not a good example, but to make sure that the content is clear and understandable.
It's a density problem. It's a density
Yeah.
problem. It's 100% a density problem. You have 80 to 100 characters in any given snippet. To get that answer into that system, that's still the mandate. It's not changed with ChatGPT. Now we could talk about Google being different, but ChatGPT is pulling snippets. And
Yep.
so the important part is having that. Right? You want to contextualize your offering, contextualize your offering. Do you want me to? I can take it here. Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
same stuff. I mean, this whole basis, nothing is different per se than what anyone would recommend you from an SEO perspective. The important part is packaging it up for answer engine, answer engine accessibility, answer engine understanding, direct contextualization. The people that are winning right now in the product game are those with the rich product descriptions. I'm telling you right now. I've looked at tens of thousands of product answers. There's this whole situation that everybody has, and I've mentioned this as well. Field completion. You have the weight, you have the dimensions, you have the materials. You're talking about the things that are actually going to matter when people are actually searching. Think about it like ChatGPT is basically applying filters in real time to those searches, basically icing out anyone without those filters, anyone who's not contextually relevant there. Yeah, super
Yeah.
important. Go ahead.
And to that point, we got an article coming out next week from Francine Monahan on our site. And Mike, the article again here that he spoke to is the differences in the feed. I think there are creative opportunities here. Like this is, I think as a marketer, you're going to have to make some tough decisions of whether you think there'll be long-term consequences, but like you can see these custom varying options within the ChatGPT feed, which allows you to, identify relationships between different products, identify use cases. It can easily be abused, but like if it benefits the user and gets your product, which is good for a certain
Yes.
audience, in front of them, is that a bad thing? I think there are a lot of like, obviously there are going to be bad faith players who abuse the system. But if you're not a bad faith player and your goal is really to get the right product in front of the right person, why
Yes.
not leverage this feed as expansively and effectively as possible?
5,000 characters. I think right now we're seeing use case specific contextualizations. Here's this use case. Here's this use case. Use it for this. Use it for that. That is extremely helpful. Literally every possible users, not like, here's the features. Here's when and how you would use it for what moment, for what kind of problem or search or issue. How do we relate those things? Anyway, yeah, keep it moving. We'll keep it moving here.
No, I'm with you. It's the customer research. So you're providing unique, highly specific or exclusive insights. That's like the information gain. We're all tired of the copycat content, and that's not going to be rewarded in AI
No,
search.
no.
Avoid ambiguity. In terms of the fluffiness, I know this, is tricky. This is ideally a better brand voice, but be specific in your writing.
Yes.
I know, when it comes to cosine similarity, vector embeddings, and relevance, we have a tool. All of this is, mathematical understandings of concepts and words and how they relate together semantically. Our relevance doctor tool. If you want to go like deep into all this, founder at iPullRank, Mike King, has written a ton about content relevance. Omnimedia. So, right now it's pulling in images, it's pulling in text, but like the video aspect of it is minimal. I think you need to really consider all the different types of media as we move forward. This is like future thinking in terms of AI search, of everything is going to be pulled into AI search. And so it's all holistic.
I'm on
Josh?
a crazy stat. Number one cited source right now in AI search is YouTube because of Google AI overviews. Google AI overviews has like doubled in the last 2 weeks. Their citation of YouTube. Crazy, by the way. I'll have a LinkedIn post out showing the crazy graph, but that's a new story. That's a whole new situation. I want to know, are they pulling from the transcript? Are they pulling from the metadata? The thesis is they've got the relationship. They can actually see the full video. They know how it's relevant. But why is Perplexity doing it so much too? It's a good question.
And so, I mean, to that point, we actually did a study recently where we analyzed the titles and the transcripts in terms of cosine similarity, and there was a correlation there. Francine, if you're able to throw that, I'll send that out in the
Beautiful.
article too. Leo on our team wrote an article with some research there. So last quick shout out to Miriam Jessier. She wrote an awesome article about, not like, this kind of goes back to the multimodal, not only just images on your site, but in the real world. If people are taking pictures and they're publishing it on social, if they're publishing it in UGC, thanks Francine. There's the article there on relevance engineering YouTube. Machine learning understanding of images and the co-occurrence of where these images, where your products exist, whether it's through like sponsorships with your logos at events or in the actual like store, all of this is going to impact how likely your content and your products show up in the space for very relevant searches. So make sure, like, you might need to have product conversations with your packaging about how accessible your packages are when they show up on different types of cameras or videos. Finally, then this is like kind of tied to profound, but like when we're thinking about that measurement aspect, Mike's talked a lot about the 3 tiers of how we're going to, kind of measure AI search in the input metrics. So content velocity, the quality of the content, the relevance. I got you, man. The channel metrics. So the share of voice, the citation rate, the citation quality, and the sentiment, because sentiment is big. You can't control what everyone else is saying, but that's why brand building is so important, to get people to say the right things about you in a positive sense. And then the actual performance metrics. You do still want to, obviously look at traffic, events, conversions, engagement, depth. Holy crap, we almost made it, Josh. We're like at the end. Let's get to the end and then do some Q&A for anyone who wants to stick around, because I do realize we're at time. We wrote the AI search manual. Please check it out. It's 20 chapters going through everything from tactics and strategies, the history, the future. Check that out there. We've been doing a lot of this, like, content engineering and relevance engineering for our clients and seeing a lot of growth with a lot of other SEO activities, but specifically the information gain, the cosine similarity. So growth in ChatGPT and AI overviews. We've seen that with a lot of our clients with our case studies. We have an AI search pilot program where we're offering the keyword portfolio, a content audit, content plan, and AI search measurement plan. The keyword portfolio basically takes our keyword research that we've typically done and expanded it using the query fan out. So it's mapped to personas across the search journey, prioritized in terms of value. And SEO Week, Josh, we met at SEO Week for the first time
We
last
did.
year in April. We're doing
SEO
it
week
again.
was legendary, legendary
Dude,
time.
you're coming again. I mean, that's
Of
in your neck of
course.
the woods.
Yeah, I couldn't
Thank you,
avoid it.
everyone. Yeah, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Let's bring in some questions. I also have to say thank you, everyone in the chat. I don't know if you've been watching the chat, Josh, since we
Yeah,
had
it's
so much
amazing.
content. You
Yeah.
guys are having so many conversations because
There's
we're there are a
there's a
lot of smart
second
people.
webinar going on in the chat right now. There's a second. It's a whole other ecosystem now.
So I feel like what I'm gonna have to do is like Francine and I were debating whether or not we were gonna turn this into a follow-up blog post, which we clearly have to do with all the content and the recording there. But we might have to have a whole section, Francine. I'll get you like all of the chat content that was
You
written,
will.
because between Ellie and Mark and everyone else and Seth and Kai and y'all, thank you so much. And a trolling section. Yeah, you get trolling call out. Do you have any kind of takeaways as people are dropping any questions that they might have here? What's your like final kind of focus on all this, Josh, going forward?
I think the importance is going to be context. We're basically engineering for context and creating a world where our information is accessible to these answer engines in the formats they're looking for. So understand it. Like I think my recommendation to everybody as they log off, as they're heading out, is to understand the documentation. Like go into how these engines are going to be reading your content, going to be interfacing with your actual website, the web. The way that it's always been beneficial for me is to just start grokking those systems, just start looking at them, start feeling like, all right, if I don't understand this from a fundamental perspective, I'm missing out on some opportunities. There's some cool things to be doing. And you can do testing at home. You can actually, run these queries, monitor the merchants that come out. You can do it at a small scale and it's totally still worthwhile. So I think there's really an importance on, keeping your expectations towards volatility, understanding the different, frameworks that we're using and the differences between them, but then also having getting your hands dirty, having fun with it a little bit because it is fun. This is a crazy time in our industry, and I don't think anyone has the answers. Anyone who says they have the answers is crazy, or they just want to sell you something, a course, something else. I don't know, but
We
people
all
that are
have
real in the
agendas.
space,
We're all biased,
people
man.
who are
We
real in
are
the space
all.
are like, here's the best possible knowledge. Here's the best possible thing that we could tell you, and everything's going to be different next month when we tell you something else because it is going to be different because the systems are changing.
Yeah, I mean, like deep life lessons here, but just really like I'm gonna get like a little Aristotelian, if you will, but everything's in the middle. Like, don't throw out all the data because you think it's all
Yes.
BS, and also don't take your one specific search that you do at home as gospel of how things are. You need
Yes.
to triangulate all your data points as best you can. Be prepared to change your opinion about things, and ultimately, like I have so much empathy for all the in-house teams, for all the other agencies out here who are trying to make a living doing this and doing the best you can, all the software teams as well, because ultimately, like, none of this is easy and nobody knows definitively, and no one's right either. Like, you could be doing everything right, and that does not mean that you are going to get the results or
Yeah.
the performance.
Yeah.
Real quick, couple of questions. How worried are you about the security level of ChatGPT and LLMs in general, Josh? This is from Kyle.
Oh my goodness. I think it's something to stay on top of, but I don't think we have any sort of recourse against it. And as long as users are using the tools and they're not concerned about it, it's kind of hard for us to be concerned first off. Yeah, I think that's a crazy thing. Like Atlas browser, super insecure. It is basically a data monitoring platform for OpenAI, which is, I guess that's what they're doing right now. That's what the game is. But it seems to be kind of the standard in such a space. Everything is kind of up for play. Everything's up for grabs. So it is kind of this like winner take all, like devil may care kind of situation.
Oh yeah. I think, and I don't, I mean, not to get political here, but I don't think there will be any like consequences for any of the behavior for
No,
OpenAI and
no.
Google. Like we see all of these lawsuits happening, like nothing's going to happen. And if anything does happen, it would be fines that don't impact their behavior.
The lawsuit is it's a precursor to a data deal. It's like, like we'll pay you for it. Would you want to drop the lawsuit? Sure, okay. OpenAI and Reddit announced deal. Okay, great. Well, that's where the lawsuit went. Okay, OpenAI and I don't know, whatever, Perplexity and Stability and Getty Images, all of them will have deals then. So it's all like, it's all basically all of that, that loudness and all that eccentricity in 2023 is just boiling down into like, few $1 million deals now. That's where it's actually going.
Yeah.
I don't know where the lawsuits are going to go though with like the recent ones with Perplexity and Reddit because by the way, Perplexity has not stopped citing Reddit, so it's quite interesting.
No,
It's
no,
still
the genie's out of
still
the
the same.
bottle.
Yeah,
You can't put any of this back in the bottle. And I know that's cynical, but I think it's like if you want to participate in the digital world, like privacy is gone, security is at risk. These are realities. You got to hope it doesn't
yeah.
happen to you. I
One,
think when Google started like doing AI overviews for health and finance related queries, I was like, okay, well, they obviously
whoa,
don't care. And we heard something
yeah,
recently with OpenAI saying like they weren't going to answer finance and health queries, but then I also saw that debunked like a minute later. So
yeah, it is crazy. And then I mean, they were saying they're going to route to humans. We'll see if that actually happens. We'll see how that goes on like mental health questions and things like that. We'll see if they actually do the human routing thing. I haven't seen that in practice. But
it's
then
a really
again,
real risk.
not many people are posting on LinkedIn. I asked 400 deeply unsettling mental health questions to OpenAI and was not routed to a human. It's a hard thing to test in general for OpenAI to understand. It's not something
And
I would test either. I don't want to take human resources or set up bots to
yeah.
go and try to trigger those kind of filters.
And I also, I mean, I don't want to ever be an apologist for
Sure.
AI. Like I do think they're evil in a lot of ways. I also think they are benefit society in a lot of ways. I think that they aren't our standards for AI are definitely higher than human standards. Like,
Yeah.
like I don't want to get too deeply philosophical in this, but it's like the expectations of an AI is like everyone can come to their own conclusions to which they benefit or negatively impact our day-to-day lives, our bigger lives. Like anyone who's impacted personally, that that's your life and that
So
changes things, and everyone who benefits, they benefit. So it's really tricky. A
I
couple of
see
quick questions.
see one
Yeah.
question about
Yeah.
personalization. I do want to
I was
headline
gonna
from
ask.
Ellie.
Yeah. So
So
Ellie ask you, how does Profound deal with AI personalization?
the thing that we're doing basically is what Garrett mentioned, which is that we are basically appending to the prompt a persona to the direct user prompt in the style that actually OpenAI reads in the actual memories. So we learned how OpenAI actually formats and reads in memories. We're basically trying to make it look like it is a memory. It basically is a persona prompt, but in the format of an actual user prompt because that's how we interface. We're on the actual ChatGPT. If we were on the API, it would be easier, but the API results, as we all know, are not the same as the consumer facing ChatGPT results. And so the mandate right now is like, we still need to show users the real ChatGPT results. We will just put it in the user prompt in the way that OpenAI expects memories to populate anyway. And the thing about that is that, okay, you set up your persona, you set up, your likes, your dislikes. You could do it for any number, pain points, likes, dislikes, context, any extra information, age, gender, income. You can set up a number of fields. You can make it very detailed. But at the end of the day, the cool thing to monitor is what the fan outs are for those personas and whether or not those personas, like what factors in those personas are interesting. And the thing that we're finding right now is that the fan outs are less important necessarily for some of the personalization than we thought. And so some fields are really important. Like some fields like pain points, super important to the fan out. That always goes through the fan out. Age almost never does. Income is not relevant for running shoes. Guess what? You say your income for your running shoe query, it doesn't actually manifest. So a different income person would not necessarily receive very different a specific, and who's talking about that, by the way, to ChatGPT, but it's in there. You can do it. You could say that's important to us. We give you the freedom to do it, but no one is going to preface their question with what's my income. But if it was someone who was like, you know, I want a executive coach, my income is blah, blah, blah. There's the value then of that field. So we give a lot of freedom in terms of actually creating those personas. Like we're not going to arbitrate what's important for your business or what's not. We did this whole study on fan out right now. Fan out, it's really cool, but like the first fan out is the most important, like positionally in order of the fan outs that are executed, because fan outs are kind of a linear
Interesting.
progression. It is the highest overlap with citations. The first fan out is the most influential. The second fan out is second most, third, fourth. But the middle of the fan out actually degrades influence. And then like it goes first, second, third, blah, 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 then last. So first, second, third, last, then the middle queries. That's the level of influence. The middle queries don't matter. So it's really quite cool. The first fan out, though, it overlaps. First fan out, first SERP position has a 40% overlap. Beyond that, it immediately tanks down to like 20, tens, teens, lower. And so we've created this really cool heat map that shows like this is where SEO is. It's in the first query fan out, in the first SERP position. Everything outside of that is noise. So I have this really cool graph I'll share on LinkedIn in the next few days that shows that relationship between overlap by fan out by SERP. It'll be really fun.
I'm so jealous. You guys can see, like, I you could easily like talk to you for like hours about all this stuff. I mean, you talking about like
So
the
much
SERP
fun.
relationship. Like, part of me is like, 5 years from now, I wouldn't be shocked if OpenAI is planning on building their own index, so they don't even have to rely on Google, and then it's a completely different
That they are
conversation.
building
Because
their own index.
I mean, yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, Apple has their own index, which we don't know what they like. They're the only ones with the only other major one. How
OpenAI
many
has their
indexes
own
are there?
OpenAI has their own product index, which is separate than their web index.
Right.
So they have a web index that they're indexing, but then they also have a product index. And the reason we know it's a product index that they have is because they host all the images of the products. So we know when you
Mhm.
submit a shopping query to OpenAI, it routes you between three different data sets. It's called P0 is Shopify, P1 is Etsy, P2 is the actual OpenAI database, which it queries very differently. So it's told you can query these databases and query them differently. And then I think what is that? P2 is OpenAI. P3, I don't know what it is still. It's still not, it
It's
doesn't show up, which is
it's
very
an it's a
cool.
black box. I mean,
It's
you're
a black
reverse
box.
engineering this stuff. Kai wants to know
Yeah.
what's the average amount of fan outs per prompt that you guys found?
3.5 from
Okay, so it is
ChatGPT
significantly
for
smaller for
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT,
Yes. Mhm.
but maybe
It
it gets
depends on the
longer.
complexity, the long tail. I mean, I would say that's the median. There's a mean. The mean is higher. The mean's like 5 point something, but the
Okay.
median is 3. There are a lot of questions that require 7, 10, 15 fan outs, depending on, especially if you're using a reasoning model. If you're using a reasoning model, everything is, if you send that extended reasoning, you come back in 5 minutes, 33 fan outs later, it's got its answer. So it can be
That's why you
crazy.
got to know like basic math with this stuff. I mean, you see these misinterpretations of so much of this data constantly,
Yeah,
and it's
always.
you got to take everything with a grain of salt. I mean, not everyone's sharing everything. Qualitative data versus quantitative data. Looking at medians versus means, and then just all the regression models that you're building out.
It all change.
Okay, I gotta stop it. I gotta stop it. We're gonna talk forever. Thank you, everybody. You
Thank you
guys,
all.
everybody here, thank you for joining us. So much fun. We'll get the replay to you. Thank you, Josh, for
Of course.
partnering up with this. Go get some sleep if you can. You probably got a full day ahead of you too. I do
You
have a
know it.
12:30 meeting to go to. Okay.
All right.
Bye, everyone.